Welcome back, family. My name is Jeremy Anata-Mensah. I'm with my co-host,
Eric Gigway.
with a shot of E&J podcast. This is our season-ending episode, right?
Yes, sir.
Say hi to the people, man.
What's up? This this is our episode, the end of season. This is our way to cap off end of 2022. This is December 31st, 2022. A lot of fun, things for New Year. Great way to cap it off for the New Year's Eve. So any plans, man?
Man, nothing much, man. Just, kicking it with the family,
Okay.
Just going to kind of be low-key. Might go out somewhere. We'll see. We still got some stuff in the works. What about you?
Man, I'm gonna chill with the wife, man. Just chill and relax. Been running around this year, so I'm gonna take this time and soak it all in and get recharged for 2023, man.
For sure. We want to remind everybody, because we always fail to say this, please like and subscribe.
Yes.
Check us out. We're on IG, A Shot of E&J Podcast. We got the YouTube channel.
Yep.
We got Anchor.
Yep.
We got all mediums. So
Yep.
please check us out. Make sure you like and subscribe. So let's get into it, man. Top 3 headlines, man.
Yep.
Start us off.
So let's start off with this. A lot of talk about the Trump tax returns, right?
For sure.
For those who've been hiding under the cave or people been busy, the House Way and Means Committee, or a committee within in the House, U.S. House, released the Trump's tax returns. I think 6 years of tax returns starting in, I believe, 2015. And so people have been waiting for this. As you know, former President Trump has been pushing back, resistant for years for his tax release to be released. It's been a tradition probably since 70s and 80s for a U.S. president to release their tax returns publicly.
Transparency to the public and so on
for
and so forth.
transparency purposes. But Trump has been resistant, and so we haven't had any insight into his tax returns as president. I think he's always defaulted to audits. It's an audit. So now, after through many court battles, the House committee was able to get permission from the courts to get his tax returns, had a chance to review it, further did some redactions, and from there they released it. I haven't paid too much close attention other than they were talking about, he had a $0 tax bill. So this is a man who makes millions upon millions of dollars, right?
Yeah.
And so they said he had zero tax bill in 2020.
Right.
He had received foreign income from many different countries while as president.
Right.
Even though he stepped away from the business, but he still owned many of his estates or many of his business. So while his children was running in the background, but people were concerned because of the whole conflict of interest concerns, right? You're in president, you having foreign relations, working on foreign relations with other countries, and then are you mutually benefiting on the other side, which incomes with getting income at the same time? Is there any certain conflict of interest? So people deep diving into it. I'm sure we'll uncover more as the weeks go by. But what's your thoughts on it?
Haven't really had a chance to really delve into it too much, but yeah, I mean, obviously, I think we all are aware of the Trump business empire, at least, as a name, as a marketing tool. His name has been huge, right? But we've seen a lot of fraud. We've seen a lot of, criminality, if you will, surrounding Trump. So it would be interesting to really see when financial auditors really get their hands on it and really can break everything down and see, like, what are the inconsistencies? What are things that kind of point to, like you said, conflict of interest, other kind of shady business dealings? Because we know they're most likely there.
Yeah.
I don't want to, cast a wide net of just doubt, but I think we're going to find something. We'll find something.
Yeah, but I think people, there's a lot of frustrations about, he's got a zero tax bill. I mean, if he's legally able to do it within the loopholes, I mean, there's not much you can do about it.
That's the corporate tax scheme, in America. So people have to kind of,
I'm not saying I'm here to excuse it, but if it's legal,
right,
there's not much you can do with it. If people are frustrated, then you need to talk to your legislators and change the tax laws.
Yep.
Which Biden did to some degree with having a minimum corporate tax rate right now with one of the legislations setting a minimum corporate tax rate for a certain income. I think it was a bill. I don't remember, but it was at a certain income. Corporations reach a certain income threshold.
They have to pay some amount of, they cannot have zero.
Exactly. You can't, it's not simply, hey, I go into Switzerland or one of the other countries and pay and register my company there and pay zero, low tax rate and avoid paying taxes in the United States. I think they set a minimum tax rate.
Right.
So we'll see what the impact will be there. But like I said, people have frustrated about him paying low tax bill. This is where you got to go to your legislators,
Yeah.
see what are they doing regarding the taxes, or do what they're doing to to change the tax system. So,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
but yeah, that's it. What's the next topic you have in mind?
So Southwest Airlines, I want to say, last week during the the Christmas season, the holiday season, had a number of cancellations. I think the most of all airlines, of any airline during the time, and some of it was attributed to the weather, but Southwest had a lot of issues with their systems, a lot of their technology, and being able to sort of update what was going on across with different employees and with staffing and all of that. So that was a big deal. I think even there was talk about an investigation coming from Congress possibly about it to kind of see, what really went wrong,
Mhm.
what happened, because federal guidelines, regulations may have been violated, what have you. Um, so, I mean, in the aftermath, it's interesting. Now they've actually been one of the first to, I think, bring on. I forget what the exact name of the new system that they brought on, but they're one of the first to do that. A lot of their flights now are on time again. Like they've completely kind of overhauled their system. So it's interesting to see that response in such a short period of time. Kind of makes you wonder what was going on, in the background before, and if it was just a perfect storm for those events to have occurred.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
I think, and you hear some reports about part of it is because there was having to be a snowstorm where the
Yeah.
major hubs were at. I think Denver was one. I don't remember Chicago was the other one, but I think I read Denver. It was a perfect. I mean, it was a situation with that. And you hear reports about staff shortage, which I'm gonna be blunt. I don't feel sorry for a lot of the airlines because during the pandemic, you saw many of the airlines cut staff significantly. And then when things started to ramp up, they're like, "We're short staff." And I'm
Well, yeah,
like,
not even just cuts, but even airfares and stuff like that.
"Oh yeah,
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 so
you're gonna, yeah, of course, because once the demand came up, you raise the prices up,
mm,
right? You got higher prices, but you don't have the staff, and then you end up having to do major cuts because now you're trying to bring people back that you just cut, right?
yeah,
And
yeah,
now you're like, I- I- you know, and then got pilots who have fatigue from working long hours, don't feel like they're getting suitable pay, and so I don't. This is like sometimes I look at it as some of the consequences of not being better prepared.
hmm
Because we've been hearing about staffing shortages for many of these airlines all year, and so I don't. There's not. I'm not having. I don't know. There's not a lot of sympathy I'm having. Right. I think I'm curious. We'll see what Southwest does. I noticed some congressional. I think Colin Allred and Jake and congressional Congressman Elsie, Texas was trying to have a call. I think with Southwest to see what's going on. And so we'll see what happens with Southwest. I'm just glad I don't fly Southwest. But like I said, this is affecting. I mean, this is not Southwest. We've been seeing from other airlines who've been
yeah.
having some mass cancellations this year.
I think they are a bargain airline, um, and a lot of people do utilize them because
Mhm.
they do give. I think it was like 2 free check bags.
Yeah, they do. They do.
Yeah, so there's an incentive if you're traveling over a holiday and you're going home and you're going to stay there for a longer period. You would definitely look at Southwest. I'm glad they got it solved. I hope that the change is permanent and it's not just something that's just you know, momentary, and it's not something that they can really sustain,
Mhm.
because I would hate for it to happen again, because it's caused a lot of havoc. There's been a lot of stories circulating within social media circles about people missing. Like this guy was going to get a transplant. He missed the opportunity to get
Mhm.
a transplant.
Yep.
Just different things that affect the quality of life of people. So hopefully they've improved it and they continue on the upward trajectory.
Yep.
Yep.
Let's probably take a moment for next topic we're going to talk about is Brittany Griner. We know she's back
Yeah.
home with the family. We thank goodness for that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know there's been some controversy about
Yes. Yes.
whether the United States should exchange a prisoner,
Yeah.
a Russian prisoner, arms dealer for
Mhm.
Brittany Griner. Some people feel like the administration didn't do enough to get him, Brittany Griner, and I think Whelan, right? In the package,
Paul Whelan.
yeah, Paul Whelan in the package deal. for arms dealer. Jim, what's your thoughts on it?
So, trying to find the Victor
Yeah.
Bout. I could be saying
Yep.
his name wrong. Known as the Russian, I guess, arms dealer of death or dealer of death, something to that. Merchant of
Mhm.
death, I think, actually. Um, Obviously, it's controversial. I think we are in a heavy cancel culture environment because there was so much pressure on the government, especially the Biden administration, to get a deal done for Brittany Griner, and a lot of people were saying no one cares about Brittany Griner, or no one cares, and they're just not really. There seemed to be this comparison to if it had been LeBron, if it had been Stephen Curry, if it had been a prominent male athlete, more would have been done. So they did something. They got a deal done. Do I necessarily think that it was the best deal? No, but these deals are not made to pass some, test of, are they the most fair?
Mhm.
They're made to get done. So
Yeah.
they got a deal done. And I think shout out to her family, shout out to everybody, because it's a lot dealing with somebody who's in prison, especially in a foreign place. And then also, obviously, I thoughts and prayers are with other families, Paul Whelan and others, that are also caught abroad for things that would relatively be minor crimes here. So all of that.
Yeah, and I think, you hear some talks about, oh, people felt it was a bad deal or
Yeah.
questioning whether Brittany Griner should be released. Here's what I want to say. For those, I get frustrated when I hear some of that talk
Hmm.
because we can talk about whether the deal was great or not, and whether I'm gonna take a leap of faith and believe that President Biden administration did all they can.
Yeah.
Right? People forget that Russia's in a war where the United States is aiding Ukraine.
Hmm.
And so that makes things difficult as
Very
far as
political.
negotiations,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Russia wants to have some tool to frustrate the United States, right?
Hmm.
And they use Brittany Griner. And so people forget that in my opinion, I didn't feel like U.S. had a lot of leverage given that. And I think they did try all they can to do a package deal. But the reality is Brittany, it ended up with Brittany. And I'm glad she's, released, right?
Yeah.
Especially dealing with those cold hard winners in Russia, right?
Yeah.
And the institutional in the correctional system. And so for all those people who felt like, oh, whether, we should have released her or not, my thing is this. Are you willing to take her place? I mean, people have this talk, but
Yeah.
if they were Brittany Griner, they'll be begging the United States, please release me. I don't care who you release.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
mean,
That's why. Yeah.
I don't, I just, I just those talks. I don't take some of those individuals seriously because I think people are
Yeah.
not realistic when it comes to it. People complain, but
Yeah.
if they're put in those positions or in those positions right now, they'd be begging, they'd be
Mhm.
crying, they'd be on the
Yeah.
floor, they'd be
Or
begging the United States
if it
to
was their
release.
family member, they
Oh
would
yeah, they'd be
definitely want to
begging. They're like,
do
come on,
anything,
do
move any
anything.
mountain to get them home.
So, like I said, I think
Yeah.
people. So I get frustrated. Not to say that the Biden administration shouldn't, we should critique, or I just think when you take it a step further and talking about, oh, we shouldn't, maybe she should have stayed there and try to get a better deal. That's when people start getting. I don't like when people do that in the comfort of their home. It's easy to
Yeah.
be in the comfort of your home and say, you know what, deal wise, I think she should stay and we should kind of
Mhm.
work out a better deal. It's easy to be in that comfort zone when you're not facing the situation. We know
Mhm.
that the roles are reversed and you in that position, you be begging.
Agreed.
So before we go, before we get on our break, NFL predictions.
Cowboys all the way. No, I think
This guy.
I,
This
I
guy.
I'm not obviously don't support the Eagles at all in any shape, form, or fashion, but they have one of the most complete teams in the league right now. Look for them to do big things. Although, this Jalen Hurts situation with is it a knee or shoulder? I always
Shoulder
forget.
sprain.
Shoulder sprain. Right. Will be interesting. I think the Cowboys have a chance. I think the Cowboys have as good of a chance as they've had in a long time to come out of the NFC. So we'll see. We're hopeful. Other notable teams, I'm trying to think. I always like Kansas City's chances. I like how they're playing right now. Who else? Who else is doing good this year? Who else? Who else is happening? I'm trying to think.
I mean, you got Cincinnati doing well, Buffalo doing well.
I'm Cincinnati, Buffalo. I'm just kind of like, will they actually come through in the clutch? I don't know.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
For me, it don't matter. And they're gonna be Philly to Super Bowl. I think everybody need to get ready to, watch Philly, watch them birds
If
fly.
you're a fan of us right now, please type in the comments. Let us know. How does one from Houston, Texas become a Philadelphia Eagles fan? We want to know.
Hey, man.
We have to do an episode on just, the history.
Yeah, I'll give you some history on that.
How that happens. Crazy to me.
But I'm thankful. It's been a blessing being an Eagles fan. I'll tell you that.
I guess so, man. I guess so.
Yeah.
So, well, all right. When we come back, we will get into Year in Review on Politics. We got a great show planned for you. Please stay tuned. Like I said, like and subscribe, follow us, and tell us what you feel. Shout out to VNJ Podcast.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to a Shot of E&J Podcast. This is your co-host, Eric Igwe.
My name is Jeremy Anatomensa.
And so welcome back from the break. Like Jeremy mentioned, we're going to talk about the year in review in politics, right? It's been a crazy year in 2022. We'll talk about that. And we'll go focus on President Biden. Talk about his accomplishments, or talk about the year in review for President Biden from his administration, beginning of his administration, to the end of 2022. But before we get started, don't forget to like, subscribe on our social media platform. So we'll start with the first. Let's talk about this politics year in review, Jeremy.
Yeah.
So, what are just give us some high and low points of 2022 politically.
So I think, party politics has been a big deal, and just in terms of seeing the interaction between Democrats and Republicans. The big story being that in the Senate, Democrats actually now gained a seat, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the House is taken over by the Republicans. And so it's kind of shaping up to be an interesting battle between Congress and the president. Obviously, you got the judicial branch in there as well, So we're going to see how the partisanship in Washington continues. I think obviously too, politically related, but not directly political topics, inflation and the economy. Those are huge political topics that are going to be important in, next year's elections and obviously 2024. Those are kind of off the top. What are you thinking?
Yeah, I some high points, and we'll talk about it, when we talk about Biden. I think Biden, I look at it as a little comeback from 2021, right? Passing some major legislation, CHIPS Act, building semiconductor chips here in the United States. We've had shortage issues that affected the price of cars for those who've been trying to get cars this year. Have felt those impacts. Talking about an Inflation Reduction Act, and that gave I want to say $300 billion to climate change and reduce the price cap the price of insulin for seniors who are on Medicare to $35. Cap the out-of-pocket max for seniors who are on Medicare to $2,000. Major impacts on the Inflation Reduction Bill, among other things. So I think those are some major wins. Overall low points for me, I would look at the fact that, of course, Roe versus Wade. People will talk about that, the impacts of that, the concerns about the court and their reasoning behind going Roe versus Wade. Overall, I think to me another ongoing low point is just having these these political candidates who are pushing the big lie, who are continuing to push election lies. When they lose, they don't just admit that they lose, right? They go back to something's wrong with the political system.
Yeah.
You have people like Carrie Lake who's had a hard time conceding when she's lost, right? Peeling. And that's the frustrating thing because, as Americans, hey, at the end of the day, you win or lose, this election system, there's no proof that there's widespread fraud, right? Election fraud. Yet you got people who are perpetrating those lies. And then you have candidates who ran this year who are perpetrating those lies. And all it does is divide the country and cause mass confusion. So I think those have been some of the low points, in my opinion, on where we're headed. And so, it'd be interesting to see where we head towards 2023 and whether we can get out and what I'm looking for is more bold leaders on not only the Democrat side, but especially on the Republican side, who continue to push back on the election lies. Not mumble, not whisper, be more outspoken and more unified and say, hey, we're not standing for election lies. We're not standing for candidates who are trying to promote it in any form or fashion.
Right.
Election system is intact. And the election system's intact, and that we're going to stand against elected candidates who don't want to concede, who want to cause mass confusion. And so I think another low point I would look at it is earlier we mentioned about the classified information, how the DOJ went to go retrieve classified material from the Trump's Mar-a-Lago's, I think, residents, right? And so to me, that's disturbing. We've mentioned earlier, no one should ever be keeping classified material, especially highly sensitive classified material, at your home, right? Anybody in those spaces, working in government, work in defense, knows that classified material are kept and stored in certain places, right?
Mm-hmm.
And for people to access, it's a need to know, right? Or you have to have certain clearances, but it's never to be taken out of specially stored locations to your home personal residence. It puts the question on what are you doing with that information? Who are you sharing that information with? Who easily can have access to that information that can that can have maybe irreparable damage to the country, to individuals who serve in this country. And so those are, I would say, some other low points too. There's many others, but the low points. But like I said, I think the Biden accomplishments has been great. I would say this is, to me, his bounce back year, and we'll talk more about it overall. What any other low points or high points for 2022?
I just think you kind of hit on most of them. I think the Roe v. Wade, the decision to sort of strike down Roe v. Wade is huge. It's a monumental decision. It's not so much, I think, that it strikes Roe v. Wade down as it is that it does so by giving states the power to sort of determine abortion laws. And you kind of get into that, states' rights as an issue. Does the states have the right to determine, the viability of a fetus, what type of abortions are legal, so on and so forth? Or is this something that, right of privacy, which is kind of what Roe v. Wade insinuated, is a right that is enjoyed, right of privacy as it relates to your medical treatment? Is that something that is just kind of universal within our federal system that all should enjoy regardless of what state they're coming from? So they're challenging some things on that. There was talk, I think, initially about there being a domino effect in other cases that dealt with, even interracial marriage possibly, or same-sex marriage being, and so it's kind of, in a strange way, I think it has, even though it is a negative thing, if you're of that political persuasion, it has sort of precipitated this domino effect of political analysts, politicians, people that are invested in this whole system, taking a microscope and looking at, okay, how do we shore up the system so that this doesn't happen again, right? And then we're paying more attention to the courts now, I think, as well. I think for a long time, Democrats were not as savvy in terms of who was being put on the courts and making it a priority like Republicans have. And so now that's starting to become a campaign issue, right? So there's that. I think the state of the Republican Party is somewhat in sort of flux. I wouldn't necessarily say it's a negative, but it's something that is definitely going to be important, significant, coming soon.
Especially with Representative Kinzinger, probably said his name wrong, and Representative Cheney being out, right?
That's what I was going to say. The Liz Cheney debacle is huge because it shows someone that was really pushing for, as you were talking about, the election fraud, pushing against that in the Republican Party, sort of was more or less repudiated by the party. So are they still kind of one foot in the door with that mentality, one foot out the door? Who knows? One good note on that, take it or leave it. But the Herschel Walker concession was extremely, I thought, well articulated, and was better than I thought he would do. Better than I've seen a Republican concede in a long time. So that that bodes well. That bodes well
Yeah, I
for
didn't
the
listen
party
to
a
his
little bit.
concession speech.
But you should go back and like I said, I'm not saying that it's it's party wide, but I think what he said in terms of, hey, believe in the Constitution. I lost, I concede, but trust in the Constitution, trust in your elected officials. That goes a long way for a Republican who was really built up to kind of be like the man in Georgia that where all of this controversy is coming from, is saying, hey, do this, despite what he said, despite all the craziness that was surrounding. For him to come out and say that at the end, I think that said something good for the party. Whether or not the party actually feels that way and the base feels that way, I don't know. But the fact that he's a Republican and he said it, it's good to me.
I mean, you're supposed to say it, and
yeah,
and like I said,
but they haven't. They haven't, right? Can we say that Republicans, and I don't want to take away too much time, but Republicans across the board are not on the same page when it comes to this election fraud mentality. It's like, if we lose, do we really admit that we lost, or do we try to tote the line that no, we didn't lose, they just stole the election, and they, that kind of business.
There's been pockets of people who's pushed back against the idea of there's election fraud. I just don't see. I haven't seen a unified force within the Republican Party to say, hey,
more the reason why,
stop the act, stop this, stop saying there's election fraud.
That's why I'm saying when a Republican of prominence does it, and whether we like to admit it or not, Herschel Walker was kind of propped up to be that. You can make the argument that he was just placed there. He was a puppet. I've heard all that stuff, right? And I think a lot of that is true. Nevertheless, for him to go against the grain, because he didn't have to do that. He could have said, they stole the election from me. It was a close election in Georgia. People would have, I think, especially his base, would have gone with that before they went with what he actually said. So I gotta give, I don't give Republicans credit, but I'm just saying it's a voice that's out there, and we gotta acknowledge it.
Yeah, I'm not acknowledging his voice. I've and when he talks, I zone out.
So you don't acknowledge what he said, something good that he said.
I've zoned out when it came to him speaking. I'm just being honest.
I hear you. And
it's not about him being Republican. It's Herschel Walker. I've seen too much. I'm done.
Yeah, I agree. It was definitely a horse and pony show for the majority of his campaign. Totally agree. But like I said, his concession speech was classy. It was on time. It was what a statesman should be. It was. So I gotta give the man credit for that. But that's all I really got, man, in terms of the highs and lows.
Okay. Well, you know what? We'll take a break. And so we'll take a break, and when we come back, we're gonna do a year in review about President Biden. Like I said, from the start of his administration. Actually, we'll do some years in review from the start of his administration to the end of 2022. So come back on the Shot of E&J podcast.
All right, family. Welcome back on the Shot of E&J podcast. My name is Jeremy Alamensa. I'm here with my co-host,
Eric Igwe.
And we're going to get into everything dealing with the Biden administration, or just, the year in review from when the Biden administration first started, the election, until now. So, Eric, what is I guess you're going to talk about some of the things in terms of the positives of the Biden administration. We'd love to hear. Love to hear what you got to say.
You know what? I'm going to give President Biden his props. I will acknowledge when I wasn't the most excited for him as a presidential candidate. Me personally, I ended up supporting him because I was like, President Biden, Trump. My mind was like,
or don't vote, but go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, but I ended up going with him. But it wasn't like, oh my gosh, let me get excited for President Biden, right?
Right.
Let me jump for joy. I wanted a much younger candidate. And I'm not. Let me make sure it's not my ageism either. But it just
sound like it.
I just felt like the nation
needed 80
needed
years
it.
old now. You know that, right?
Yeah. But I wanted, somebody younger to kind of move the country forward. But he ended up getting elected. I did end up voting for him at the end of the day. But in the beginning, things starting to start out slow. He did pass the American Rescue Plan, which is big, right? To help definitely put a lot of relief for COVID and help get more wider distributions for shots And then also people got the relief checks, right, through the American Rescue Plan also, which was pretty huge, and right, and also expand the child tax credit, right? Rather than get your money when you file your returns, you're able to get some of that child tax credit early on through some checks. So those were huge, right? The American Rescue Plan, he pulled off getting support on both sides for that bill, or yeah, support on both sides from that bill, if I recall. I also said that they was to pass the bipartisan infrastructure bill. That was huge, right?
Hmm.
Um, I think the thing is, that's going to be to improve roads, bridges, major highways. He's going to help expand broadband access across the country, deal with changes in pipes, change many of the overhaul many of the systems that needs to be redressed, right? And so that's a huge thing. But the thing is, you won't. Part of the problem is we're not going to feel those impacts for years, right? Even though he has put updates on like, hey, I repaired this many bridges have been repaired, or this many roads have been repaired so far, right?
Hmm.
But it's hard to touch and feel the impacts, right? It'll take some years. So, but those are wins too. And then you felt like there was a slow spot, right? Because inflation started to kick in, right? And then in 2021, and then you felt like he was having a lot of pushback and people concerned heading into early 2022 about President Biden. Is he going to get any more successes? Is he getting pushback? Not no luck, not a lot of luck with Senator Joe Manchin and trying to get a deal with him, and people were concerned about whether President Biden is going to get any more major wins. And then,
Hmm.
hey, some things started to happen, right? We just mentioned earlier, got the CHIPS Act also put together. We mentioned about shortages of chips, right? Semiconductors. So able to set up, get a bipartisan legislation to set up semiconductor manufacturing plants in the United States, help give the United States a competitive edge. Rather than being so reliant on foreign countries to get chips, you can start building it here at home, create more job opportunities. So I think that is a major win. But then Democrats went pulled a fast one, because right after that, Senator Schumer and Senator Joe Manchin had a side deal, a private deal to go push out the Inflation Reduction Act, right? So
Hmm.
you guys heard about Bill Better back early on, where Democrats wanted that bill, or a lot of the progressives wanted that bill that be huge on climate change and
Yeah.
so many other things. But
Green. Yeah.
Representative Joe Manchin felt like the bill was too large as far as value and kept pushing back. So he ended up negotiating a private deal with Schumer, which did piss off some Democrats because they felt like they weren't part of that private deal. And so it was a bold move, because if they would have pushed that Inflation Reduction Act the same time with the Chip Act, some people feel like the Republicans would have like not voted for the Chip Act if they knew that bill was coming. Senator Schumer waited until that Chip Act get passed to go push their Inflation Reduction Act, which, like I mentioned, brings like $300 billion into climate change initiatives, help cap the price of insulin to $35 for seniors on Medicare, cap the out of pocket expenses for seniors on Medicare, I think to $2,000. Help further reduce healthcare premiums for people who are on part of Affordable Care Act, who are recipient of Affordable Care Act or part of that program. So many other things. So that happened in August, and that was a major win. And then, of course, Ketanji, having her sworn in
Hmm.
a Supreme Court justice this
Right.
year. And then towards the end of the year, they're able to get $1.7 trillion spending bill out. And then they actually added in a retirement bill, right? That kind of forces many employers to set up 401ks
Hmm.
for because they want some companies have automatic 401ks, but this bill is enforcing many of those employees who are eligible for 401ks, forcing many of those employers to set up a 401k, so
Right.
people can have savings. No longer we'll work and work and work, and we don't have a savings or retirement plan in place, and then you're having a hard time when you're in your 60s. Now it forces many of those employers to set up 401k plans and have them contribute, and have I think contributions start at 3%, but I believe have some employers contribute also, which is huge, or expand how much more money that seniors can put into their retirement plans, or allow even some employers to match student loan payments with matching contributions to a 401k. So read into that Secure 2.0 bill. But there was a lot of significant legislation I felt like passed this year. I feel like Biden had a comeback here in 2022, in my opinion. And then also, I'll give him credit on people worry about whether he's going to push for student loan forgiveness, and he ended up pushing for it.
Let's jump in. Let's jump in. So let's start off right there with the student loan forgiveness and what was discussed during the election. Let's go back to 2020. Let's talk about, Biden in the conversation vis-a-vis Elizabeth Warren, vis-a-vis Bernie Sanders, and others who were really thinking that there would be a concerted effort by the party, and that Biden would sort of take up the mantle of how can I get more relief for those dealing with, these burdensome student loans. And at the end of the day, the Biden administration waited, it seems like forever, to finally roll out a plan that effectively only eliminated, for a lot of people, it was a $10K for people, and then $20K if you're married. I forget the exact numbers.
I think it was $10K if you make up to, I think it's $125 if you're single, or $250 if you're married, and then up to $20K if you ever received a Pell Grant. For those who make it under $125 for single, and I think $250 for marriage.
Right.
Those are married.
So, I mean, the reality is that if you have, let's just say over $50,000 worth of debt, or I'll even say, let's say you went to grad school and you accumulated somewhere close to the six-figure mark, $80,000, $90,000, maybe even $70,000. The $10K might help you, but it's not really the life-changing big piece of sort of, it's not in line with the hopes that I think most individuals that were really making it a campaign issue were having, and so I question, I just expected more information coming from the administration. I expected more of a discussion. They could have done town hall meetings. They could have done a lot of things to really discuss, okay, here are the different ideas that we're kind of grappling with. Here's why we're, we haven't moved forward yet formally with a plan. Yes, we have to worry about getting a justification for it because obviously we know it can get challenged in the courts, which it has been, which has kind of been what, has held it up. So we get the fact that they can't just push it through. However, I think more should have been done. And it just shows me personally how they didn't really take it seriously to not do more on a national scale to inform the public, to really let everyone know of what they were doing. It was like, well, this is what we're going to do. And again, as a campaign issue, I think a lot of people were thinking somewhere in the neighborhood of 50,000.
He never said 50.
He never said 50.
He said 10. He said he would like 10, and he never said. I don't think
he didn't. I agree. But I'm saying that I think the best minds at the time coalesced around a lot more than 10,000. The thought that was circulating amongst progressives in particular was more than 10,000 or 20,000.
Yeah.
It was 50,000. It was even talks of, like I said, are they going to forgive all student loans? Or, which for some people that might sound crazy, but let me remind you that we are one of the only developed countries in the world that still charges the rates of tuition that we do for formalized post-secondary education. A lot of countries you go to, they have those that are going to college. Now, they might have to do a year of national service or something like that, but college does not cost what it does here. So you're putting individuals in a position where you're stopping them from being able to do or pursue certain careers because of the debt that they have to take on vis-a-vis, the education that they got, right? And we want to encourage people to go get education. Education is one of the things that keeps people out of poverty, right? At least this is what the economists say, right? Keeps you out of poverty, keeps you out of structural unemployment, where you're not employed because you don't have a skill set. So if you're
Mhm.
educated, you have a skill set. So if anything, we should be encouraging that people to go to school, people to go get degrees, advanced degrees, so on and so forth. How do we do that? We have to make sure, and this is kind of the other piece of it, the cost of education should be more reasonable. And that's another problem. But I don't wanna
I
hog
mean,
your time
I
up.
no, I mean, I hear you. I hear a lot of low points. He told me how you really feel about President Biden administration.
Yeah, I mean, he just, I mean, like I said, when it comes to that, I think he really dropped the ball.
I don't see how he dropped the ball. Because my thing is, yes, would I have liked him to push for more than 10, 20,000? Of course. But, he ended up pushing for it. He said 10,000 before he got elected. And he got elected with those words. He didn't want to go and push for this, do an executive order, push for forgiveness of 10,000 or 10,000. And he did that. We don't know if the Supreme Court's going to move
Uphold
forward.
it or not, yeah.
They may end up rejecting it next year. And they do, guess what? Nobody gets nothing.
Yeah.
And there's not much can be done unless you get a legislation in place. And we already know that you got a good amount of Republicans who are not for
Of course.
widespread student loan forgiveness, right? And so you got a numbers game. So I get progressives are frustrated, but this is a numbers game. They're not in control.
Mind you though, this is something that the Biden administration promised progressives that they would take up the mantle and do something about.
They just did. He just pushed forward.
They promised that in my opinion, the sentiment around it was that they would do more.
He just did. He gave you up to 20,000 for people on Pell Grants. He did not guarantee getting up to 20,000. That was never part of his messaging.
Yeah, I'm gonna
never
say,
part of his
I'm gonna
messaging.
say he didn't do enough. I'm gonna say he didn't do enough, but I mean, you're right. He did not, directly promise more.
And if a progressive have issue with it, then sound like you got work to do to get more people, more elected candidates in place so you can have a majority. Because until then, it's just talk. It's gripe, frustrations. And like I said, I'm not saying I don't want to. I get it. And I think, like I said, my belief is, yes, I would have loved him to get to push for more. But if you really want a sure thing, you need to get elected officials in place who advocate for it and get into law. If you don't get into a law, then relying on executive order and leaving it to the courts is a dangerous thing, right? It puts you in a precarious situation where you're like, are they going to be for it or not going to be against it? Putting a law provides more security to get student loan forgiveness, right? I think he has the rights to actually waive student loans, but it's something
during a pandemic.
Yeah, especially during a pandemic, he's using that.
During ordinary times, does he really have the right? That's the question.
But I think legally, based on what the law he's using, especially during the national emergency, using the pandemic, I think he has a case for it. But this is a conservative majority. They may very well just push back and say, you know what? Even though I think those people who are suing don't even have standing, but it may. Unfortunately, my fear is that may not even matter.
Well, that certainly will be contested in the courts whether or not they have standing. But I think the other thing I would say quickly is that inflation in the economy has been a big disappointment with this administration.
Yep.
I think the administration has tried to handle it, but they have not done the best job of keeping inflation under control. And I really think there needs to be some type of consideration with what corporations are able to, some type of price control. I don't know how we would do it, but some type of price control on profit or the revenue that corporations can have vis-a-vis the prices that they charge consumers for certain goods. Because we're in a time where they're at unseen levels of profit, and they've justified it by saying, well, it cost us more money because of the war in Ukraine and all these different things in order to actually, make things and manufacture things and transport things. And they want to pass those costs on to the consumers. But now I think it's clear that they're actually, they're price gouging. They're not only making up, the money they're losing in terms of, what's going on in the world, they're adding in a little extra cushion. That's putting some upward pressure on prices. So Biden administration has to do more.
Well, and I'll acknowledge that in inflation. I think for me, they're trying to do what they can. I do think that one of the low points is the fact that they said that it was transitory earlier, right? I think in 2021, it was transitory, temporary inflation. Then you find out, no, inflation is lasting a lot longer. In 2022, inflation is still an issue. Secretary of Treasury acknowledged, hey, sorry, inflation is not transitory, right? But
Yeah.
they're trying to work to address it hopefully next and get it under control by next year. So that's one of those points as far as not being as transparent. Maybe he was fed the wrong information. Don't know. I think the Afghanistan withdrawal, right?
Yeah.
We talked about it last year. We talked about the Afghanistan withdrawal. Wasn't the biggest highlight, right?
Yeah.
It was a low point in the administration, so I would give it that. But overall rating, I'm gonna give him, at least a B plus. Like seriously, so far to this point, given then what we don't know what to expect, and given some of those major wins, and he ended up advocating and pushing for some level of student loan forgiveness, and these major
With his
bills.
approval ratings, you really think
I don't care about the approval ratings.
So,
Those
C plus. He's a C
I-
plus at best. Combined with how most Americans feel, like I said, the economy, Afghanistan, the war, I think he's at a C plus
Ooh.
level.
All right, we're gonna move forward on that.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, so we talked about the Biden
Mhm.
administration transitioning into, what the political landscape looks like in 2023. What are your thoughts on that as we go forward?
I think a few things to watch out for as far as landscape predictions. We'll see if Speaker of the House, the Republicans have control of the U.S. House.
Mhm.
Uh, right now, with reports of Speaker McCarthy don't have the votes right now on the Republican side to become Speaker of the House. Whether it becomes him or someone else, Republicans, whoever's the Speaker of the House, is going to have a hard time managing some of the extreme side
Yeah.
of their party and the moderate side, balancing those acts. I think you're going to see a difficult time. And I think, unfortunately, you may see a lot of witch hunts going on, right? Maybe Hunter Biden, other witch hunts. And I just think it's going to be, pay attention to what the Speaker of the House does next year and how they manage both sides. I think they're going to have that person is going to have a difficult time. And I just think they're not going to be effective at the end of the day. That's just my opinion. I'm going to be interested to see the interaction and how the speaker interacts with Mitch McConnell. Because Senator McConnell, there's some Republicans frustrated with him pushing along with the $1.7 trillion spending bill, supporting President Biden on certain bills this year, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I want to see it's going to be interesting to see how that all works out with the Speaker of the House on the Republican side, Senator Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, because the Democrats are still in control of the Senate. It'd be interesting to see that. I'll be watching for student loan forgiveness. Will the Supreme Court reject it, or will they actually move it? Because I'm praying and hoping that they will let it stand and let student loan forgiveness happens, because there's so many people who's felt the impacts during the pandemic, right? And then you have people lost jobs, and then debt was accumulating, and so I'm hoping that the courts will let it happen, because, like I said, I don't think those people suing have standing at all. They can't demonstrate any harm. I don't think. And so, but we'll see. I'm nervous about how the Supreme Court is gonna what decision they'll make in 23. I think my fear is we'll see if Biden runs too. I think he'll end up running. I think he'll declare that he'll run or make his intentions that he'll run in 2023. We know elections now until 2024, but I think he'll make that announcement. And then I think the thing to watch out for is immigration. Will immigration bring down President Biden administration ultimately? It's more and more people coming in. It's one of the things they struggle with. And so I'd be curious to see what the impacts, how they deal with immigration.
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit the highlights. I think, generally speaking, 2024 is right around the corner, and so we are once again going to be a year away from a presidential election. So I think it'll be very important to see how Democrats strategically put certain potential candidates in the line, assuming that Biden doesn't, try to get reelected. By all accounts, he says he's going to try to get reelected, but At 80 years old, you kind of have to wonder. And we have to admit, it is a little ageist. I mean, it is a little ageist. It just is, But I think Americans generally want a person who has some experience, someone who's in their 50s or 60s. But do we want someone as old as an 80-year-old who will be 82 running again for another 4 years? And we've seen some sort of, and the internet is not kind always to individuals, but we've seen some instances where Biden kind of looks a little bit, not there, a little disheveled, So is that the image that the party wants to put out for 2024, knowing that the Republicans are going to come probably with some type of youth, right? With respect in regards to who Biden will face. So we'll see. I think it'll be interesting to see whether Trump is indicted. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that he will not be indicted.
Ooh.
I don't think he will. I think the DOJ has had plenty of time. The FBI, all the players that are, really investigating and trying to see what's going to happen. They have had more than ample time and enough opportunity to bring an indictment. We're not just talking about him getting convicted. We're just talking about an indictment. Has he done enough to pass that test? And I think he has. I think it's kind of clear he has. But for whatever reason, there seems to be a lot of trepidation on the part of the federal government. And people are talking about what may happen in New York or in Georgia. Let me tell you something, folks. I don't think anything's going to happen there because you're talking about a state, what will amount to a state prosecutor bringing forth criminal charges against a former president of the United States. Don't think it's going to happen. I think the Fed's got to do it.
I think they may have a better chance with New York and Attorney General James than federal court. Federally, maybe they'll indict him. Whatever it is.
I don't think they will. That's why I said I don't think the Feds will do it, but I don't think anybody else has the balls to do it, including New York. I think
if there's any chance it maybe be New York. I think either way, you know what? He's not gonna get. There will be no. Mark my words. Former President Trump will not get convicted in any form or fashion
absolutely
in 2023.
Absolutely not.
It's not gonna happen.
Absolutely
It's
not.
one of those things where I have to see to believe it.
Yeah.
Maybe he'll get indicted. Do I see any conviction in 2023?
Absolutely not.
No, not at all.
I think there's as just kind of like a randomish side issue, there's some talk about will Congress, which I don't think it's going to happen, but will Congress finally ban those that are using insider trading information from being able to do that? I can't think of AOC who brought it up, or I forget who it was, but the bill's been introduced. Don't think it's going to go anywhere, but it should become a campaign issue. I feel like it should. Will it or not? Who knows? And then the implementation of the First Step Act. I think we are starting to now see more pressure being put on state jails and the federal system as well to address the disparities between crack and cocaine sentencing, and to equalize it, right? There's been a lot of talk about it. And like I said, the First Step Act should do that. Will the implementation, though, is what's going to, be an issue now. Will the jails actually enforce it? And are they going to count people's time correctly, right? Because who's checking that? Who's really checking that to see if, so-and-so who got 20 years now, his sentence should be reduced now to 15 years. Is that actually happening, right? So I could foresee some type of, for lack of a better word, class action type suit coming from a prisoners group if it's, you have some Innocence Project or someone steps in and says, hey, you know what? We're finding widespread abuse and just mismanagement, and they're not implementing the First Step Act. Okay. So those are my predictions.
All right. You heard some of our predictions. We'll see in 2023 if some of it comes to fruition or some of it doesn't. We'll all find out. I'm hoping 2023, we'll see if it becomes a better political year, but it still means we still got to be involved, right?
Yes.
There'll be city elections going on in 2023.
Got it.
School board elections going on in 2023 in many of the cities, so please stay tuned in politically. This is not an off year politically, right? No matter what, always be on. And so we just thank everyone for tuning in this year to Shot at E&J podcast.
Yeah.
We wanted to end the final episode of this season on New Year's Eve, and
Yeah.
so we hope that everyone enjoy. We hope everyone have a great new year.
Yes.
Until 2023, we'll be taking a short break, but we'll come back in 20 and later, and we'll come back later in 2023 with a new full season, a lot of excitement,
Yeah.
a lot of exciting
More
topics.
guests. Yeah.
Taking it even a step further. And so, Jeremy, any final thoughts before we go?
I think it's been a great season when we look back on it.
Yeah.
I think we've done a lot in terms of bringing guests. So I think we're gonna keep with that energy, keep with that, and like you said, it's never an off year. It's never an off year for politics. You know what I'm saying? The show goes on, the movement continues. So get out, be aware of the issues. I want to tell people to make sure that they vote and that they're involved in local elections. But even if you're a person who is feeling like the system doesn't care about you, or you feel like, hey, my vote doesn't matter, I would encourage you, be aware of the issues. Still know what's going on, because those things are going to affect you whether you vote, whether you participate or not.
Yep.
And so we should be in a culture, we should encourage a culture of education around politics, to be aware how we can use it, whether it's voting or doing other things besides voting, to better ourselves and better our causes.
Yep. Oh, well said. So everyone, like I said, enjoy your New Year's.
Happy
New Year.
Yeah.
And stay tuned on what we on our page. Check our social media pages.
Yes.
Stay tuned.
Like and
We'll be
subscribe.
back 2023. Happy New Year, and thank you for tuning in. A Shot of E&J podcast.